So I've decided to compile a top 5 list of reasons not to move to Alaska if you're, one of those lower 48ers that, isn't used to, the shit that we're used to up here in Alaska. I'll start with 1 being the least thing that you have to worry about, and 5 being the worst one, the most extreme, all right? As you can tell with my backdrop, I love Alaska. I love living here. I live in Wasilla, but it's not really for everyone, Alaska in general. We have a lot of things that are very different from the lower 48, but as you'll see with this list, if you can't handle it, then it's best you stay in the lower 48. I'll start with 1, cost of living. The cost of living in Alaska is pretty high. It's not as bad as Hawaii or the very top of Alaska, like the North Slope and we used to call it Barrow. I think it's called something different, like Ugajavik or something. But it's a lot more. It's probably like, to give an example, let's say a frozen pizza, usually costs around $9 at Walmart. In Barrow or the North Slope, it's going to be about probably $24. Yeah, cost of living is higher up north in the north of Alaska, but it's still even higher in Wasilla and Anchorage and the Valley. So yeah, the PFD makes up for that, but you only get that once a year, and not everyone is eligible for it. So, anyways, moving on to number 2. I don't have my green screen set up, by the way, guys. Otherwise, I'd probably have some pictures coming up on the video, but just work with me here, all right? Number 2, you can't drive out of state. Unfortunately, you can't drive out of state. If you got family and friends that you'd like to go and drive to across state lines, like in Tennessee or in Illinois or Indiana or Texas, where I'm originally from, Texas, then maybe Alaska isn't for you, because you can't. It's really difficult to fucking drive through Canada right now in 2022 with the COVID shit. So unless you're gonna fly to go and see your family, it might be kind of a fucking headache. Just to be honest, yeah. If you like driving state lines, Alaska isn't for you. That's number 2. Moving on to number 3. Number 3. This one is just my own personal thing. The midnight sun. I can't stand it. I hate the midnight sun. I really do. It's not for everyone. A lot of people like Alaska for the midnight sun, the fucking 24 hours of daylight. It's not as extreme in Wasilla as it is in Fairbanks and Barrow, or Nome. But it really can fuck with your sleep, man. I sleep in the basement starting in June, early June. I start sleeping in my basement and I black it out because I can't deal with the endless sunlight. Even in Wasilla, I mean, still we get a good amount of the midnight sun. Nonetheless, I mean, you can't see the sun fully at midnight here in Wasilla, but you'll still see the sunlight. So it can get to you, and a lot of people like it. I don't like it. I might have just repeated myself, but sorry about that. Anyways, that's number 3. Moving on to number 4. Dark winters. This one I personally love. I'm a weirdo. I fucking like the dark winters where we only get 3 hours of very, very weak daylight. What happens at least here in Wasilla, the sun will just barely come up, and I'm behind the mountains. My house is behind the mountains, so I won't even see the sun. You'll see a little bit of sun, like the sunset light, golden hour. It'll be like that for 3 hours, and it'll go straight back down. That's it. That's actually a big problem for a lot of people, because a lot of people just can't fucking deal with it, man. They can't fucking deal with it. I guess 4 and 5 are kind of intertwined. So 5 was going to be the extreme cold, but I guess the extreme cold and the dark winters actually tie into one. So we have a huge suicide rate, unfortunately, here in Alaska. I think it's mostly on the native population, but a lot of people just can't deal with it. That's why we have a lot of burrows up here in Alaska that are dry. They're dry because a lot of people in the villages abuse alcohol. So that coupled with depression and eventually suicide, yeah, I can see why they would have burrows here that are dry. So I mean, I've told this to my homies back in Texas. Like, look, you want to come and visit? I actually get excited about it when someone wants to come and visit Alaska in the winter from the lower 48, because especially if they've never experienced it. I've been here 2 years. Because their reaction is always interesting, because they're like, oh my God, the sun barely just came up. Man, I can't even see it. It's like nighttime all the time, Braulio. And I'm like, they're like, how do you deal with it? And I'm like, I don't know. I got a garden in my basement, and I've got this they call it a happy light. It's called a happy light, or an seasonal affective disorder. There we go. Where you just stand in front of this light. It replicates sunlight. It doesn't have the UV rays, but it replicates the sunlight, and it pretty much tells your brain that there's full sunlight outside even when there's not. That's, I guess, my mental way of dealing with the lack of sunlight in winter. Yeah, it's nowhere near as bad as Barrow, like I said, because of the poles. But yeah, in Barrow, I don't think the sun rises at all. Like, there's no sunlight at all in Barrow, and luckily here in Wasilla we don't get it to that extreme. But the extreme cold, it gets negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter on a really cold day. I got a gas heater. I actually love the cold. I wouldn't have moved here from Texas if I didn't like the cold. Otherwise, I would have been a fucking psycho. But I love the cold, and I love it feels like you're on another planet. I think that's what attracted me to Alaska so much from Texas, is that it feels like you're living on another planet being here in the winter primarily. Not so much the summer, but the winter. Because it's, oh my God. I never thought that air moved the way it did when you breathe outside in negative 20 degrees. Oh, it's a trip, man. It's a fucking trip. But it's not for everybody. And from what I've been told from all my friends and family back in Texas, they think I'm fucking crazy for living in the conditions that I live with up here in Alaska. But I thrive on it. I not only like the weather, but I enjoy the clout. I do. I'm serious. If I was being honest, I enjoy the clout. I enjoy the clout of like saying, yeah, I'm in Alaska, the most badass state of all. You got to be a real man to fucking go through the winters that we go through up here in the last frontier. I love going out more in the winter outdoors with my layers on and my hat and all the gear on. I love that. I didn't do that in Texas. The coldest it gets in Texas in the winter is what, like maybe at 32, maybe, what is that, freezing? That's it. Maybe a couple degrees above freezing. That's it. No, it's way more extreme here. If you're fucking outside in the winter in Alaska without any gear on, you'll probably die within a day. So Mother Nature is a real bitch up here, man. It really is. But anyways, that's my top 5 reasons to maybe reconsider moving to Alaska if you can't handle it. If you're one of those people that's like, I like the sunlight, I like the beaches, and I like, doing all the city boy shit, then Alaska probably isn't for you. Anyways, I'm trolling a little bit, but Braulio's out. Peace.